Hey guys, back again with the reviews. It's been a month. Been on vacation and as well as finding a new job and found a new job. So I've been in training for like the past few weeks. So that's been taking up my time. Still focusing on the channel and trying to figure out what to do with this. But I did want to go into a little bit of a Quentin Tarantino thing. And why you ask? Well, because Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction have came out the past month. I thought I'd pick those up and go on. And I thought I'd like to preface this by talking a little bit about Tarantino. So during the 1980s, right, where everything was about big budgets, kind of where it is sort of today, where it's all focused upon, like you have your Ghostbusters, your Indiana Jones, like this Spielberg sort of influenced cinema where it's more about getting, butts in the seats more than it is about not like creative license or whatever, but or creativity in general, but um, just more built for like the whole family sort of audience, right? And so you had people like Tarantino who was working at like movie stores or whatever, looking at these sort of these like exploitation films from Italy and sort of this sort of reminiscing about like this new Hollywood style that has gone that had fallen on its ass because of Heaven's Gate, right? Well, that's sort of the narrative, but in reality, those films were sort of losing traction anyway. That's sort of this sort of this creative manned by the director that was sort of losing popularity anyway. People wanted more entertainment at that point. So, but during the 1980s, you had these directors that were sort of like not directors, but these people that were influenced by cinema that were sort of hating the trend that was going on during the 1980s. And Tarantino was sort of like the making scripts and trying to make movies the way that he wanted, right? So, but in the middle of this, you had stuff going on in the 1980s. It just, of course, wasn't as big as the other movies were. But anyway, fast forward to 1992, and Tarantino had gotten better with his writing. He had sold the script to True Romance, and Tony Scott eventually directed that. That will be the next video, but we're going to focus on his first feature, Reservoir Dogs, made in 1992. And almost a miracle that this movie was even made. Of course, Harvey Keitel mainly produced this movie just based on the script alone, which at that point, Harvey Keitel was going through a career renaissance. Of course, Bad Lieutenant, as well as other movies, in the future like Ulysses S. Gaze. But in this context here, of course, Tarantino, influenced by Mean Streets, of course, loved Harvey Keitel and wanted to put him in his movie. Of course, would have him come back and as Mr. Wolf in Pulp Fiction. But this is where it all started, Reservoir Dogs. And when I watched this about 2 weeks ago, Tarantino for me, and I'll give you a little bit of like personal history on Tarantino. So like I watched Inglourious Basterds in 2009 whenever I was 15 years old. And I love that movie. I still think it's an incredible film experience. I think Christoph Waltz is like one of the best villains in cinema history. And that's all on Tarantino, giving him this character to play, right? But the oversaturation of Tarantino at that point had come into full effect. And why is that the case, right? You had Simpsons episodes about it. You had Robot Chicken. You had like all of these other in these sort of like these pockets of sort of animation, which I was watching full on at the time, and a lot of parody, a lot of sort of tribute to this monument, and I'll go into that a little bit in the next video, but for me, Tarantino has always been a sort of like my ego sort of gets in the way of it. I'm just like, oh man, who is this guy? Like his movies can't be that good, right? So it took me a very, very long time to really like get to just get that out of my head and just okay, well, all the best parts of the movie have already been spoiled for me. So, and that's why I'm not really like a huge spoilers type of guy, because I know that people want to just go into a movie just completely free of any sort of pre-notions or anything like that, right? So Reservoir Dogs, when I first watched it, was the least I knew about. There's only the ear cutting scene that I knew about, right? And I was very, very surprised at how, I dare say, great movie that Reservoir Dogs is. And I do, so there's a lot to unpack here. So So for Reservoir Dogs first, it's not even really a gangster movie. It's more of this sense of like a prison that you're kind of trapped in this situation, right? And you try to think out of it when there's no way out, right? It's sort of like this purgatory. It's like, like maybe death in like the last 5 or 10 minutes, and you're just going through all the motions again. And all the steps that had gotten up to that point, right? And that's what it goes through. It's twists and turns. A lot of great acting here by Keitel, Tim Roth, Steve Buscemi, and Mike Madsen, of course, is this, the psychopath, right? And even Chris Penn, in his tracksuit and all, he was great in this too. And so for me, the best thing about Reservoir Dogs is that there is literally no action, no anything really about. There's not really this sort of action in the movie until pretty much like the last few moments of the movie. And it's really just talking through this sort of situation, and eventually, there's sort of like a restraint that you can't sort of get out of, and this is what Harvey Keitel's character deals with in this movie. And I thought it was absolutely beautiful, the way that Tarantino was able to script this bad guy, but he really just wanted someone to like, kind of open to, and try to not get out of the lifestyle, but to at least have some common ground or some emotional understanding with someone. But in the life that you sort of craft on this sort of gangster thing, like it just doesn't work out, right? So that's what I always took away from what Reservoir Dogs. And I do think that, and of course you have like your Tarantino script writing, like, the jokes, the insights, what have you. But I do think that the main thing about this movie is the performances and the way that everything was structured, and that it wasn't this action-packed film, but the way that it's able to unfold these sort of emotional layers of a very closed-off human beings and beings in general, I thought was absolutely wonderful, and probably one of my favorite Tarantino movies, honestly. And if you haven't saw Reservoir Dogs, which I'm pretty sure you guys have, definitely give this a watch. This 4K is great. Obviously, there's a Steelbook out with the ear, of course. But yeah, definitely a must watch. And I say that about most of the movies on here, but I did really enjoy this movie, and Tim Roth's performance as But so definitely give this a watch. My next video, it will be True Romance, and I will definitely go through that. And so I will say, like, once Pulp Fiction came out, Reservoir Dogs sort of got like lost in the shuffle. Not a lot of people watched it. And then, of course, when Pulp Fiction happened, this got a revisiting. And I do think it's a shame, because I think hot take, but I do think this is a better movie than Pulp Fiction. But we'll definitely get into that whenever that video comes out, because that'll be a long one. But thank you guys so much. It'll be fun, doing these videos again, but appreciate it. I'll come out with True Romance here in probably a couple days. Thank you so much.